The stars had always seemed peaceful to Admiral Grace Sullivan, but tonight they looked like cold and distant eyes watching humanity's final hours unfold. She stood on the bridge of the carrier Endurance, her hands clasped behind her back as she studied the sensor displays that covered the main screen. And what she saw made her blood run cold. 3,000 warships, each one larger and more powerful than anything Earth had ever built, were moving through the outer edges of the solar system, like a swarm of metal locusts ready to devour everything in their path. "Admiral, we have confirmed visual on the lead vessels," said Lieutenant Kevin Park, his voice trembling slightly as he spoke. "They are even bigger than the refugee report suggested." Grace nodded slowly, her gray eyes never leaving the screen. And she thought about the refugees who had arrived 6 months ago from Proxima Colony. Broken and terrified survivors who spoke of cities burned to ash and populations enslaved or exterminated without mercy. The Valorian Empire had been conquering star systems for decades, and no civilization had ever successfully resisted them. Not once in all their campaigns of terror and destruction. "How long until they reach Earth?" Grace asked, keeping her voice steady even though her heart was pounding in her chest. 9 days at their current speed," Kevin replied after checking his instruments. "Maybe 8 if they decide to accelerate. 9 days to save a planet," Grace thought to herself. 9 days to find some way to stop an enemy that had crushed every opponent they had ever faced in the Great Council chamber in Geneva. Chancellor Maria Santos was addressing the assembled leaders of Earth's united government, and the fear in the room was so thick that it felt like a physical weight pressing down on everyone present. "We have tried every diplomatic channel," Maria said, her voice heavy with exhaustion after 3 days without sleep. "We sent messages of peace, offers of trade, even proposals of surrender under favorable terms. And their response?" asked one of the delegates from the Asian Federation. Maria's face darkened as she remembered the cold and cruel words that had come back across the void. "They said we have 2 choices, submit completely and become slaves of the Empire, or be destroyed down to the last man, woman, and child." The chamber erupted in chaos as delegates shouted at each other, some demanding immediate surrender to save what lives they could, others calling for a glorious last stand against the invaders, even if it meant total annihilation. But one voice cut through all the noise, quiet and calm, yet somehow carrying to every corner of the massive room. "There is another option," said an old man who had been sitting in the back row, largely ignored by the younger politicians who had forgotten his name and his contributions to humanity's defense decades ago. Maria turned to look at him, squinting as she tried to remember where she had seen his face before. And then recognition dawned in her eyes. "Dr. Henry Cole, you retired from the Defense Council before I was even born. What could you possibly know that our current scientists do not?" Henry stood up slowly, his joints aching from age and from the long journey he had made to reach this chamber. And he looked around at all the frightened faces staring back at him. "I know about Project Lazarus," he said simply. "I know what we buried under the mountains 50 years ago, and I know that it might be our only hope of survival." The name meant nothing to most of the delegates, but a few of the oldest members of the council went pale as memories of classified briefings from long ago surfaced in their minds. "That project was terminated," said an elderly general named Frank Porter, his voice shaking. "It was deemed too dangerous to ever be used." "Too dangerous compared to what?" Henry asked, gesturing toward the screens that showed the approaching Valorian fleet. "Too dangerous compared to extinction?" Maria looked back and forth between the 2 old men, sensing that there was a secret here that had been kept from her generation. "What exactly is Project Lazarus?" Henry took a deep breath before answering, knowing that his next words would change everything. In 2089, humanity made first contact with an alien species we called the Architects. being so ancient and so powerful that they made the Valorians look like children playing with toys. I have never heard of any such contact, Maria said suspiciously. Of course you have not, Henry replied. Every record was erased, every witness was silenced or made to look like a fool spouting conspiracy theories. We were not ready for the truth back then. He walked slowly toward the main screen, his eyes fixed on the images of the enemy fleet. The architects visited Earth millions of years ago and left something behind, buried deep in what would eventually become North America. A device of incredible power that we discovered by accident during a mining operation. What kind of device? Maria asked. We called it the resonance engine, Henry said. It does not fire missiles or energy beams like our weapons. Instead, it does something far more terrifying. It changes the rules of reality itself. A murmur of disbelief rippled through the chamber. But Henry pressed on. When we tested it in 2091, we targeted a single asteroid in the belt, just a small rock floating in empty space. And the results were catastrophic beyond anything we had imagined. He pulled up old footage on his personal device and sent it to the main screen, showing grainy images of an asteroid suddenly changing course, colliding with another body, sending debris spiraling toward Mars, where it struck a colonial dome and killed 17 innocent people. The engine did not destroy the asteroid directly, Henry explained. It made destruction inevitable by changing probability itself. It turned bad luck into a weapon. It made the impossible become certain. And you want to use this against the Valorians? Maria asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I want to give humanity a chance to survive, Henry answered. The Valorians have superior ships, superior weapons, superior numbers. They have every advantage that matters in conventional warfare. But they have never faced an enemy that can make the universe itself turn against them. Grace Sullivan received the message from Geneva 3 hours later, ordering her to provide protection for a classified operation that would be humanity's last hope. And as she read the details of what Dr. Cole was proposing, she felt something she had not felt since the refugee ships arrived. She felt hope. Dangerous and fragile, but real nonetheless. Set a course for the coordinates in this message, she told her helmsman, and tell the fleet to prepare for something none of us have ever seen before. The clock was ticking. 9 days until the Valorian Empire arrived to claim Earth as its latest conquest. And somewhere deep beneath the Appalachian Mountains, an ancient machine that had been sleeping for half a century was about to wake up. The helicopter touched down on a barren mountainside in West Virginia, and Dr. Henry Cole stepped out into the cold morning air with a determination that made him feel 30 years. Younger Captain Daniel Harris walked beside him, a soldier who had been assigned to protect the old scientist with his life if necessary. And behind them came a team of engineers and physicists who had been told almost nothing about their mission, except that the survival of humanity depended on it. The entrance is about 200 meters ahead, Henry said, pointing toward what looked like nothing more than a rocky outcropping covered in dead vines and fallen leaves. They disguised it well back when they sealed this place. Daniel studied the area with trained eyes, noting the subtle signs that something unnatural lay beneath the surface. How many people know about this location? Before today, only 3, Henry replied. Myself and 2 others who are now dead. We agreed that the secret should die with us. But the Valorians have forced me to break that promise. They reached the entrance and Henry pressed his hand against a section of rock that looked identical to the rest. An ancient machinery hummed to life as a door that had not been opened in 50 years slowly ground aside. The tunnel beyond was dark and smelled of stale air and forgotten time. And the team activated their lights as they descended deeper and deeper into the earth, passing through security checkpoints that still functioned. Despite decades of neglect, my grandfather was one of the original researchers, Henry explained as they walked. He spent his entire career studying the resonance engine, trying to understand how it worked and why the architects had left it for us to find. Did he ever figure it out? Daniel asked. Henry shook his head. Not completely. The technology is so far beyond our understanding that it might as well be magic. But he learned enough to know that it was both a gift and a warning. A warning about what? About the kind of power that comes with responsibility, Henry said. The architects did not just give us a weapon. They gave us a test. A way to prove whether humanity deserved to survive among the stars. They reached the final door. A massive vault made of materials that human science could not identify. Covered in warnings written in every language on Earth, plus several that had never been seen before or since Henry entered a code that only he knew. And the vault door began to open with a sound like distant thunder. The chamber beyond was enormous, carved from the living rock of the mountain, and at its center stood the resonance engine itself. A structure that seemed to shift and change even as they looked at it, as if it existed in more dimensions than the human eye could perceive. Beautiful, whispered Dr. Amy Chun, one of the physicists on the team. It looks almost alive. In a way it is, Henry said. The architects built their technology from a combination of organic and mechanical components. The engine has been dormant for 50 years, but it never truly died. It has been waiting. Daniel felt the hairs on his arms stand up as they approached the device, sensing some kind of energy that his body could not name, but instinctively recognized as dangerous. You said it was tested once. What exactly happened? Henry sat down heavily on a bench that had been left behind by the original research team, his eyes distant with painful memories. We were so confident back then, so certain that we could control anything we discovered. The asteroid test was supposed to be simple, just a small demonstration of the engine's capabilities. He paused, gathering himself before continuing. The engine does not destroy things directly. It manipulates probability. It takes events that are theoretically possible, but extremely unlikely, and makes them happen. The asteroid did not explode because we attacked it. It exploded because suddenly every possible accident that could happen to it happened all at once. And the debris that hit Mars? Daniel asked. Collateral damage from a chain reaction we never anticipated, Henry admitted. The engine does not just affect its target. It affects everything connected to that target through cause and effect. We pulled one thread, and the whole tapestry of reality began to unravel. Amy was examining the engine's control interface, her scientific curiosity momentarily overcoming her fear. How do you aim something like this? How do you tell it what to target? That is the most difficult part, Henry said. The engine requires a human operator to serve as a kind of focusing lens, someone whose mind can interface with the architect technology and direct its power toward a specific goal. And what happens to the operator? Daniel asked, already suspecting the answer. Henry's face grew even more grave. In our original tests, we used volunteers from the military, brave men and women who believed they were serving their country. All of them suffered severe neurological damage. 3 of them died within hours of their sessions. The others were never the same again. The weight of this information settled over the team like a shroud. And for a long moment, no one spoke. We need someone with exceptional neural compatibility, Henry continued. Someone whose brain is naturally suited to processing information from non-human sources. And we need to find them within the next few days, or none of this will matter. Back in orbit, Admiral Grace Sullivan was reviewing personnel files that had been flagged by the medical division, searching for anyone who might fit the criteria that Dr. Cole had described. Commander Lisa Moore, she read aloud, studying the photograph of a young woman with dark hair and serious eyes. Neural compatibility rating of 93%. The highest on record since we started testing for this trait. Lisa had made a name for herself during the salvage operations on Europa. where she had successfully interfaced with alien technology recovered from an ancient shipwreck. Technology that had killed or driven mad everyone else who had attempted to use it. "Get Commander Moore to my office immediately," Grace ordered. "And do not tell her what this is about. I want to explain it myself." An hour later, Lisa stood in attention in the Admiral's quarters, her expression curious but disciplined as she waited to learn why she had been summoned. At ease. "Commander," Grace said, "please sit down. What I am about to tell you is classified at the highest level, and I need you to listen to the entire briefing before you make any decisions." Lisa sat, her eyes never leaving the Admiral's face, and Grace began to explain about the resonance engine, the architects, and the terrible price that operating the device might demand. When she finished, Lisa was silent for a long time, processing everything she had heard. "My sister was on Proxima Colony," Lisa finally said, her voice steady but her hands clenched into fists in her lap. "I watched the recordings that the refugees brought with them. I saw what the Valorians did to the people who surrendered, how they separated families and worked them to death in labor camps." "I am sorry," Grace said gently. "I did not know. The Valorians do not deserve mercy," Lisa continued. "And if this machine can stop them, if it can prevent what happened to my sister from happening to everyone on Earth, then I will operate it. Whatever the cost." Grace reached across the desk and placed her hand over Lisa's. "The cost might be your life or worse. Are you certain?" Lisa met her eyes without flinching. "I am certain, Admiral. Some things are worth dying for, and protecting 8 billion innocent people is definitely one of them." The preparations began immediately, with teams working around the clock to restore the resonance engine to full functionality, while Lisa underwent intensive training to prepare her mind for the interface ahead. The clock continued to count down, and somewhere in the cold darkness of space, 3,000 Valorian warships drew closer with every passing hour. 6 days had passed since Dr. Henry Cole led his team into the mountain, and the resonance engine was finally coming back to life. Lisa Moore sat in a small room adjacent to the main chamber, electrodes attached to her temples as technicians monitored her brain activity and prepared her for the connection that would either save humanity or destroy her mind. "Your neural patterns are remarkably stable," said Dr. Amy Chun, studying the readouts with a mixture of fascination and concern. "I have never seen anyone adapt to the preliminary interface this quickly. I have always been different," Lisa replied with a faint smile. "When I was a child, I used to have dreams about places that did not exist. Geometries that made no sense. My parents thought I was disturbed until the military tested me and discovered my compatibility." Rating. Henry entered the room, looking exhausted but determined, his old body pushed far beyond its limits by the demands of the past week. "The engine is at 70% power and climbing. We should be ready for full activation within 24 hours. Will that be enough time?" Lisa asked. "It will have to be," Henry said. "The Valorian fleet will be within weapons range in 3 days. We cannot afford to wait any longer." In orbit above Earth, Admiral Grace Sullivan was coordinating the largest defensive formation in human history. Every warship that could fly had been called to protect the planet, forming a thin shell of metal and courage between the approaching enemy and the billions of people below. "Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the Valorian flagship," reported Lieutenant Kevin Part, his face pale with apprehension. "They are demanding to speak with whoever is in charge of Earth's defense." Grace straightened her uniform and nodded. "Put them through." The main screen flickered and then displayed the image of Supreme Commander Vorath, leader of the Valorian invasion force and conqueror of 17 star systems. His face was angular and cruel, with eyes that had watched countless civilizations burn without a trace of remorse. "Human commander," Vorath said, his voice cold and dismissive. "I am offering you one final opportunity to surrender your world peacefully. Accept our terms, and your people will be permitted to live as servants of the Empire. Resist, and you will be exterminated without exception." Grace met his gaze without flinching, drawing on every ounce of courage she possessed. "Supreme Commander, I have a counteroffer. Turn your fleet around and leave our system immediately. Do this, and we will allow you to depart unharmed." Vorth's expression shifted from contempt to amusement, and then to something like genuine laughter. "You threaten us? Your entire fleet could not scratch the paint on my flagship. You have no weapons capable of penetrating our shields. No technology that we have not already surpassed centuries ago. You might be surprised," Grace said calmly. "We have resources that you know nothing about." "Impossible," Vorth declared. "We have studied your species extensively. You are primitive and weak. Your only value to the Empire is as labor for our mining operations. Surrender now or face annihilation in 3 days." The transmission ended abruptly, and Grace let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. "Admiral," Kevin said quietly, "do you really think we can stop them?" Grace thought about Lisa Moore down in that mountain, about the ancient machine that was humanity's last hope, and about all the people across the planet who were counting on her to keep them safe. "I think we have to try," she answered. "Whatever happens, we cannot let them take our world without a fight." Back beneath the Appalachian Mountains, Lisa was being led into the main chamber for her first direct connection with the resonance engine. The device pulsed with blue light that seemed to come from somewhere beyond normal space, and the air around it felt thick with potential energy. "Remember your training," Henry said as he guided her toward the operator's chair at the center of the apparatus. "The engine will try to show you everything at once. Every possibility, every outcome, every version of reality that could exist. You must stay focused on our goal." Lisa nodded, her heart racing but her mind clear. "Target the Valorian fleet, make their technology fail. Make their ships tear themselves apart." "Exactly," Henry confirmed. "But be careful not to go too far. The engine's power is nearly unlimited. If you lose control, it could affect more than just the enemy. It could destabilize reality itself." Lisa settled into the chair and felt the connections activating around her. Cold metal interfaces pressing against her skin as the machine recognized her neural signature and began to synchronize with her consciousness. "I'm starting the calibration sequence," Amy announced from her station. "Neural bridge forming now." The world began to change for Lisa as the engine opened her mind to possibilities she had never imagined. She could see the strands of probability stretching out from every object and every person. An infinite web of cause and effect that connected everything in the universe. "It is beautiful," she whispered, tears streaming down her face as the full scope of reality revealed itself to her. "I can see it all, every choice, every chance. Every moment that might or might not happen." "Focus," Henry urged her. "Do not let yourself get lost in the visions. Remember why you are here." Lisa forced herself to concentrate, pushing aside the overwhelming flood of information and searching for the threads that connected to the approaching Valorian fleet. And when she found them, she understood why the Empire had never been defeated. Their ships were engineering marvels, designed with redundant systems and fail-safes that made catastrophic failure nearly impossible under normal circumstances. But the key word was nearly, because nothing was truly impossible. "Only improbable. I can see their weaknesses," Lisa said, her voice distant and strange as she spoke from two worlds at once. 1,000 tiny flaws that would never matter on their own, but together could bring down the entire Armada. "Can you reach them from here?" Henry asked. "The fleet is still 3 days away." Lisa smiled, though her eyes remained closed and her consciousness remained merged with the engine. "Distance does not matter, not for this. Probability does not care about space or time. only about connections. She began to work, reaching out through the web of causality and touching the strands that held the Valorian fleet together. And somewhere in the cold void of space, events began to align in ways that no one could have predicted. A maintenance technician on a Valorian destroyer decided to delay a routine inspection by 5 minutes so he could finish his meal. A decision that would prove catastrophic in 3 days when the component he should have checked failed at exactly the wrong moment. A navigation officer on a cruiser made a tiny error in her calculations. An error so small that it would not be noticed until the fleet entered Earth's orbit and found themselves in a formation that left them vulnerable to chain reaction disasters. 100 similar threads were pulled. 1,000 small changes set in motion, none of them significant on their own, but all of them building toward a moment of perfect destruction. "It is done," Lisa said finally, slumping back in the chair as the engine released its grip on her mind. "The trap is set. When they arrive, they will find that the universe itself has become their enemy." Henry caught her as she began to fall forward, lowering her gently to the ground while medical personnel rushed to check her vital signs. "Is she all right?" Amy asked anxiously. "Her brain activity is elevated but stable," one of the medics reported. "She is exhausted, but she should recover." Lisa opened her eyes and looked up at the worried faces surrounding her. And despite everything she had just experienced, she managed a weak smile. "Tell the Admiral to be ready," she said. "The real show starts in 3 days." The morning of the 9th day arrived with a silence that seemed to cover the entire planet, as if Earth itself was holding its breath and waiting for the storm that was about to break. Admiral Grace Sullivan stood on the bridge of the Endurance, watching the sensor displays as the Valorian fleet emerged from the darkness of space, like a wall of metal stretching from horizon to horizon. 3,000 warships bristling with weapons that could crack continents and boil oceans. "All ships report ready," Lieutenant Kevin Park announced, though his voice wavered with the knowledge that their fleet was hopelessly outmatched in any conventional sense. "The resonance engine platform is in position behind our formation." Grace nodded, her eyes fixed on the approaching enemy. "Open a channel to all Earth forces." The communication link activated and her voice carried to every ship in the defensive formation, to every soldier and sailor who had volunteered to stand between humanity and extinction. "This is Admiral Sullivan," she said. "In a few minutes, we will face an enemy that has never known defeat, an empire that has conquered star systems and enslaved billions. By every measure of conventional warfare, we should have no chance of victory." She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. "But we are not fighting a conventional war today. We have something the Valorians have never faced, something they cannot understand or counter. All I ask is that you hold your positions and trust in the weapon that our scientists have prepared." On the Valorian flagship, Supreme Commander Vorath was surveying the pathetic defensive line that the humans had assembled, and he could not help but feel a sense of disappointment at how easy this conquest was going to be. "Their largest vessel is barely the size of one of our escort cruisers," said his tactical officer with obvious contempt. "Their weapons are generations behind our most basic armaments. This will not even qualify as a battle." Vorath nodded in agreement, but something nagged at the back of his mind. A memory of the human commander's strange confidence during their last communication. What is that structure behind their fleet? The one that appears to be generating unusual energy readings? The tactical officer examined his sensors and frowned. "Unknown configuration, Supreme Commander. It does not match any weapon or technology in our databases. Should we target it first?" "No," Vorath decided. "It is probably just some primitive attempt at a superweapon. We will destroy it along with everything else." Begin the attack. The Valorian fleet surged forward, their weapons charging with energy that made the stars themselves seem dim by comparison. And for a moment, it seemed like the end of humanity was only seconds away. But then the universe began to fight back on the destroyer's swift justice. A power coupling that had been slowly degrading for months finally gave way at the precise moment when the main weapons array was drawing maximum energy. The resulting surge overloaded systems that should have been protected by multiple redundancies. And the ship's reactor went critical in a blinding flash of antimatter annihilation. The explosion caught 17 nearby vessels in its blast radius. Ships that had drifted into an unusually tight formation due to a series of navigation errors that no one had noticed until it was too late. What happened? Voreth demanded, watching in shock as a chain reaction of destruction rippled through the left flank of his armada before anyone could answer. More disasters began to unfold across the fleet, each one seemingly unrelated, but all of them feeding into each other like dominoes falling in an impossibly complex pattern. Fuel line on the cruiser Eternal Wrath ruptured at a connection point that had been inspected and certified just hours before, spilling volatile compounds into compartments where electrical sparks waited to ignite them. The gravity generators on the battleship Unconquered will reverse polarity without warning, sending crew members crashing into ceilings and walls, and more importantly disrupting the delicate balance of the ship's weapons. Targeting systems airlocks cycled open on a dozen vessels simultaneously, venting atmosphere and crew into the vacuum of space. The result of a software glitch that had lurked undetected in the fleet's networked systems for years. "This is impossible," the tactical officer stammered. "These failures have no common cause, no explanation. It is as if luck itself has turned against us." Voreth stared at the chaos engulfing his fleet and felt something he had not experienced in his entire military career. Genuine fear on the bridge of the Endurance. Admiral Grace watched the destruction unfold with a mixture of awe and horror, understanding for the first time the true scope of what the resonance engine could do. "They are tearing themselves apart," Kevin said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We have not fired a single shot, and they are already losing hundreds of ships. This is not victory," Grace murmured. "This is something else entirely. Deep beneath the Appalachian Mountains." Lisa Moore was connected to the engine once again. Her consciousness expanded across the battlefield as she guided the flows of probability toward their devastating conclusions. She could see each Valorian ship as a collection of systems and components, each one with its own small chance of failure. And she was making all of those small chances happen at once. Antimatter containment on a dreadnought flickered for a fraction of a second, just long enough for a microscopic breach to form and begin growing. A communications array on a carrier sent a garbled signal that was misinterpreted as an attack order, causing 3 escort vessels to open fire on their own eyes. A hull plate on a troop transport that had been weakened by micrometeorite impacts finally gave way under the stress of combat maneuvers, decompressing an entire deck full of soldiers. "How much longer can you maintain this?" Henry asked, watching Lisa's vital signs with growing concern as the strain on her body and mind increased. "As long as necessary," Lisa replied through gritted teeth. "They have to understand that they cannot win. They have to retreat, or I will destroy them all." The Valorian fleet was in complete disarray, ships colliding with each other as they tried to evade disasters that came from every direction at once. Commanders screaming contradictory orders as they struggled to comprehend. An enemy that attacked through coincidence and bad luck. Supreme Commander Voreth watched his invincible Armada crumble around him and finally accepted what his instincts had been telling him since the battle began, that the humans possessed something beyond his understanding, something that made all his superior technology and numbers meaningless. "All ships retreat," he ordered, his voice hollow with defeat. "Withdraw from the system immediately. Supreme Commander. We still outnumber them, his tactical officer protested. If we press the attack, we can still. Press the attack against what? Vorath interrupted, gesturing at the screens, showing his fleet destroying itself. We are not fighting their ships, we are fighting reality itself. And reality appears to be on their side. The surviving Valorian vessels began to turn away from Earth, their engines straining as they fled from the nightmare that had consumed their comrades. And as they ran, the disasters that had plagued them began to fade. Lisa released her grip on the probability streams, allowing the universe to return to its normal state. And she slumped in her chair as exhaustion overwhelmed her. It is over, she said weakly. They are running. On the Endurance, Admiral Grace watched the enemy retreat and felt tears streaming down her face. Tears of relief and sorrow, and a strange kind of grief for the thousands who had died without ever understanding what had killed them. We won, Kevin said, his voice filled with wonder. We actually won. Grace shook her head slowly. I am not sure winning is the right word for what just happened here, but humanity is safe. At least for now. The Valorian Empire had finally met an enemy they could not defeat, and the galaxy would never be the same. 3 weeks had passed since the battle that changed everything, and the world was still struggling to understand what had happened in the space above their heads. The Valorian fleet had lost nearly 2,000 ships in less than an hour, destroyed not by human weapons, but by their own technology turning against them in ways that defied every law of probability and reason. Lisa Moore lay in a hospital bed in Geneva, recovering from the ordeal that had nearly cost her life, her mind still haunted by visions of all the possibilities she had seen during her connection with the resonance engine. Admiral Grace Sullivan sat beside her bed, holding a bouquet of flowers that seemed inadequate given what the young commander had sacrificed for humanity. The doctors say you should make a full recovery, Grace said gently. Your neural patterns are stabilizing, and the headaches should fade within a few months. Lisa smiled weakly, her eyes still carrying that distant quality that everyone who had operated the engine developed. I was lucky. The original operators were not so fortunate. You were more than lucky, Grace replied. You were exceptional, and every person on Earth owes you their life whether they know it or not. In another part of the hospital complex, Dr. Henry Cole was giving his final briefing to Chancellor Maria Santos and the United Earth Council, explaining everything he knew about the resonance engine and the choice that humanity now faced. The engine has been returned to its vault, Henry said. We have improved its containment and updated its security protocols. But the fundamental question remains the same one we faced 50 years ago. What do we do with a weapon that can reshape reality? Maria looked troubled, her mind clearly wrestling with the implications of what she had witnessed. Some of my advisors believe we should use the engine proactively, that we should destroy the Valorian Empire completely before they can threaten us again. That would be a mistake, Henry said firmly. The engine is not a surgical tool, it is a force of nature. If we turn it against the Valorian homeworld, we might destroy them. But we might also set off a chain reaction that spreads far beyond our intended target. So we simply wait for them to attack again? Asked General Frank Porter, frustration evident in his voice. We wait, and we prepare, Henry answered. The engine is a deterrent now. The entire galaxy will learn what happened here, and they will think twice before threatening Earth. But we must never use it carelessly, or we become exactly the kind of monsters we fought against across the solar system and beyond. Word of Earth's impossible victory was spreading like wildfire through the civilizations that had lived in fear of the Valorian Empire for generations on a dozen conquered worlds. Oppressed populations whispered to each other about the humans who had made the invincible Valorians run in terror. And some of them began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, resistance was not as hopeless as they had been taught to believe. Supreme Commander, Vorath's final transmission to the Imperial Council had been intercepted and decoded by human intelligence, and its contents were being studied by analysts trying to understand what the enemy would do next. "Do not send reinforcements," Vorath had said, his voice still shaken by what he had witnessed. "The humans possess technology beyond our comprehension, something that makes our weapons and our tactics meaningless. I recommend permanent quarantine of the Sol system and cessation of all contact with the human species." The Imperial Council had apparently agreed, because no new Valorian ships had been detected approaching human space since the Battle Chancellor, Maria Santos, addressed the people of Earth in a broadcast that reached every corner of the planet. Her words carefully chosen to acknowledge what had been done while also setting boundaries for the future. "Citizens of Earth," she began. "3 weeks ago, we faced extinction at the hands of an empire that has never known defeat. Today, that empire flees from us in fear, not because of our ships or our soldiers, but because of a secret that has been kept hidden for half a century." She paused, gathering herself before continuing. "The resonance engine saved us, but it is also a reminder of how dangerous unchecked power can be. I am announcing today that the engine will be placed under the control of an international oversight committee. It will never be used except as an absolute last resort, and its capabilities will never be shared with any other nation or species." The response from the public was mixed, some celebrating humanity's newfound power, while others feared what that power might do to the human soul. Lisa watched the Chancellor's speech from her hospital bed, feeling the weight of her role in everything that had happened. And she thought about what the engine had shown her during those terrible and beautiful moments. When her mind had touched infinity. "You look troubled," Grace observed. "What are you thinking about?" Lisa was quiet for a long moment before answering. "When I was connected to the engine, I saw more than just the battle. I saw futures. Thousands of different versions of what humanity might become." "What did you see?" Grace asked. "I saw us as conquerors," Lisa said, "using the engine to dominate other species, the same way the Valorians dominated them. I saw us destroy civilizations and remake the galaxy in our image." Grace's face darkened. "That is a terrible vision, but I also saw us as something else," Lisa continued, her voice growing stronger. "I saw us sharing what we learned, helping other species defend themselves against tyrants, building alliances based on mutual respect instead of fear, becoming teachers instead of rulers." She turned to look at Grace directly, her strange eyes filled with a knowledge that went beyond ordinary human experience. "The architects did not leave us a weapon, they left us a choice. Every civilization that finds the engine faces the same test. Will they use it to destroy, or will they use it to protect? And what did we choose?" Grace asked. Lisa smiled, and for the first time since the battle, it was a genuine smile filled with hope. "We chose to let the Valorians retreat. We had the power to annihilate them completely, but we held back. We proved that we could be trusted with the responsibility of this technology, somewhere far away, in dimensions that human beings could barely perceive, let alone comprehend." The architects watched and waited. They had seeded the universe with their gifts millions of years ago, leaving them for young species to find when they were ready. Most failed the test, consumed by the power they discovered and destroying themselves in wars that shattered stars and emptied solar systems. But occasionally, a species passed, demonstrating the wisdom and restraint necessary to wield such power without being corrupted by it. Humanity had passed their first test, but it was only the beginning. The universe was vast and filled with dangers that made the Valorian Empire look like children playing at war. But for now, Earth was safe, its people united by the knowledge that they had faced extinction and survived. Not through superior strength, but through the discovery that the cosmos itself could be their ally in the vault beneath the Appalachian Mountains. The resonance engine pulsed with quiet blue light, waiting to be called upon again if the need arose. A reminder that humanity had claimed its place among the stars and across the galaxy. Other species looked toward that small blue world with something that had not existed before: respect. And just a little bit of fear, and for the first time in a very long age, hope that the old empires might finally be brought down by an enemy that fought not with weapons, but with the fundamental forces of reality itself. The story of humanity's journey was just beginning, and the universe was watching to see what they would do next.